Welcome to our new series, The 200 Movie Challenge. Our goal this year is to watch 200 movies that we haven't seen yet. If you want to listen to the full podcast where this clip is from, the link will be in the description. Now enjoy today's movie. Let's get to you. What was the first movie that you saw this week?
So the first movie I saw, actually pretty sure my first documentary this year. I watched a movie that I've been meaning to watch for a long time, and it was the movie When We Were Kings. This movie tells the story of Muhammad Ali and George Foreman's big fight in Zaire, early 70s. I don't remember the exact date, but it just goes through, sort of the overall hype of the fight, walks you through, the kind of political climate at the time, and then, through the eventual match itself, which, had Muhammad Ali as a huge underdog against George Foreman. George Foreman was an absolute monster. And a lot of people thought Muhammad Ali was going to get his ass handed to him in this fight, but he ended up having George Foreman, use up his energy in a brilliant way, as we know right now, as the rope-a-dope, and eventually ended up just knocking George Foreman out. And that's really the plot of it, but just the overall documentary and everything that it just goes through. The times, it talks about some Don King stuff as well. It's a very well done documentary. I believe it won an Academy Award for a documentary in the late 90s. So it's been on my list for a while, and it was kind of, some easy lifting, and I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed the overall vibe. I think Muhammad Ali as a character and as a sports figure is one of my favorite of all time. And if you are a fan of old school boxing, I know boxing is definitely not the same as it was back then. Incredibly pleasurable watch. I loved it. And I just loved the way it was done. Super informative. It's one of those documentaries that is not super long. I think it's like maybe an hour and a half long, so it's in and out, but really well done. Love the music, love the vibe. A lot of the political issues that they were dealing with in the 70s was pretty much mirrors some of the stuff that we're dealing with now. And I just thought it was a very well done documentary and super enjoyable. And I think if you like boxing, especially the romantic old school boxing idea, this is a great movie to watch. And as far as where I rank it, pretty sure I had it right behind, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lawrence of Arabia, and just ahead of Terrifier 2.
Yeah.
Just for the overall quality of it. Again, I've said my piece on Terrifier 2, which lasted for 3 hours in the last video that we did. But, this was a very solid documentary. It did not have the emotional impact for me as the Jim Henson one that it has for you.
Yeah, but I grew up on those characters, so yeah, a little different.
It was a good Saturday morning watch. I watched the documentary. I watched. It was informative. It was awesome, and I just love. Like I said earlier, I love Muhammad Ali, and it's funny to think about what George Foreman became too, as we kind of associate him with the Foreman Grill. But he was.
I wasn't going to say it, but yes,
he was a ridiculous boxer, but Muhammad Ali played mind games and was able to get him to a spot where Muhammad Ali really had no business winning that fight. George Foreman was just way stronger. But again, Muhammad Ali just goaded him and egged him on and made him use up all his energy. And by the time the fight was almost over, he was gassed. And Muhammad Ali, I'm not sure if it was his last fight. I feel like it was. People can correct me if they want. But again, as an overall movie experience and documentary, solid. If we were to use our rating systems that we used to use before, solid 8. And that's why I put it above Terrifier 2.
Interesting. And yeah, I quickly looked this up for you. Ali's last boxing match was against Trevor Berbick on December 11th, 1981 in Nassau, Bahamas. The fight was called Drama in Bahama.
Now, did Muhammad Ali win that fight? Because Muhammad Ali was kind of towards the downside of his career against George Foreman. And Trevor Berbick, I want to say he got his ass knocked out by Mike Tyson.
Let's see. Ali was 39 years old at the time of the fight. The fight was chaotic, with Berbick almost not fighting because he wanted more money. I don't. I just this.
Interesting.
These are the first few things that just came up on Google.
We'll save it for the boxing podcast.
Yes. So let me ask you real quick before we go to your second movie,
Yeah.
because obviously you talked about being a fan of boxing. Personally, I am not. I've tried. My stepdad was huge into boxing matches. He actually
Yeah.
liked a lot of the, because I remember Tyson fights and they were quick, but he loved a lot of the mid cards and stuff like that. So here's a quick question for you with When We Were Kings before we go to your next film.
Mm-hmm.
Would a non-boxing fan actually enjoy this? Do you think they will get something out of it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you're a boxing fan, you'll definitely get a little bit more excitement, but just overall the story, the political climate, everything like that is very well done. And I think it's overall, pretty darn good. I did not grow up a big boxing fan. We've talked about it before. Of course I watched Mike Tyson and I watched Evander Holyfield and Lennox Lewis. Boxing in the 80s and the early 90s used to be much more of a thing in the United States, but there's so much that is asking for people's attention these days that I don't know. I know boxing is still relatively big, but for me, when I got into boxing, to be quite honest with you, was there was a video game called Fight Night Round 4. And that's where I learned a lot of, these old school boxers, and I played them, and I would always have to go against, I would be like Mike Tyson versus George Foreman, but I played Fight Night Round 4 all the time on Xbox. And it was one of my favorite video games of all time. It had Teddy Atlas on there doing commentary, who Teddy Atlas very famously was in Mike Tyson's corner in the early 80s. And he's just a great mind and boxing mind. I mean, Teddy Atlas is one of my favorite people, but Fight Night Round 4 is when I really got into it. And then from Fight Night Round 4, I started doing research and I started getting into it and started really understanding, how they call it, like the sweet science, and just kind of getting into, like I mentioned earlier, the kind of romantic side of what boxing used to be before it got, quite corrupted and what it is now. I think if boxing had more of a kind of an NFL, MLB, like structured, streamlined thing, I think boxing would be more popular. But I think that it's more of a one-time event, and there's a lot of people in the public, and I'm sure people will disagree, that it just kind of has an air of being fixed sometimes. Logan Paul versus Mike Tyson,
Jake Paul.
Oh,
Let's not get into you for not knowing who the brothers
both these
are again.
motherfuckers look the same to me. All right, I don't fucking know Logan Paul, Mike Paul, Jake Paul. I don't fucking know.
Paul.
Paul.
No, I was just giving you a hard time, but
No. That's gonna be the running. That's gonna be a running joke of all these episodes. Be like, can you tell the difference between Logan Paul and Jake Paul? I can't, and I don't really want to.
no, I think a part of me only can now is because Logan Paul did or is still doing some WWE shit. He actually has put in the work. I'm not gonna, as much as I want to hate on him.
I've seen some shit.
I've seen some shit. You're like, okay. But yes, I could care less about either of the Paul brothers. But yeah, I've also changed, going back to boxing, never been a true boxing fan. Then again, I've never been a UFC fan either, any of these. I tried watching when it first started, when it meant to be like mixed martial, this fight against this style, but nowadays I'm just like,
just give me fake wrestling. Just give me fake wrestling. At least with fake wrestling, I could follow it. There's a storyline and there's a plot. People are always like, this is fake. I'm like, you go into the movie theater and point at the screen and go, this movie's not real. It's like, no shit.
Oh,